there's always that disparity between we're doing it this way because that's how we've always done it, and we're doing it this way because that's the best way to do it.
It's hard to believe, but some people think, this finance is not the most important thing in the world.
Welcome to the Financial Innovations Podcast, where we are helping CFOs save money and time by implementing cutting-edge technology. Here I have Roland Lang. Roland, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to being here.
So before we jump into our episode, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself and your current role?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So I'm here, Roland Lang. I'm the VP of FP&A at Kindeva Drug Delivery, and have like 20 years of experience in the medical and industrial industry, especially in finance, business finance, and FP&A.
No, that's great. We want to, highlight different tools and technologies and, just processes in place that CFOs, financial executives can use to, make their roles more efficient, as well as make their businesses more profitable. So, your wealth of experience is greatly appreciated over here. I guess the first question that I have for you is: Are there any tools or types of tools that that you've implemented that where you've seen the most bang for your buck, so to say?
So I used a galore of tools. So the most two important tools that I've used in my last 20 years were on the front and on the back end. One was the data gathering tools. So here I turned into a big fan of LongView. So mainly about how the ERP data is being flowing through and how I can use it in Excel. And then on the visualization aspect, here I'm a big fan of Power BI. So really, how can you translate all the data galore into a visual aspect to be easily dissected and dove into? So those are my two most important tools that I use day to day or try to use day to day.
No, that's great. In terms of, I guess at your organization, were you involved in like the rollout of those tools, or were they already there?
So like in the first one for LongView, so that's already been a standing tool. I was heavily involved on how to refine and make it more useful towards the end of it and make it meaningful, especially as it came to the outlooking years and what kind of granular detail you could do. And then as it came to Power BI, in my last two companies, it was already established. And then in the current one, we just started rolling it out. And here we are pretty much greenfield in terms of data visualization, data exploration, and data interpretation. So we're starting ground up here at Kindeva and trying to bring it to the first level or the second level.
No, that's great. It's good because we talk to executives at all different stages of reporting, dashboarding journeys. So it's great to see you're more on the cutting edge over here of implementation. What was involved in rolling out Power BI? Like, can you share a little bit about like who did you have to get buy-in from within the organization? How did that process go?
Well, the urge, no, that's a great question. The urge really came for when we had lots of data that was floating around from different ERPs, and how can we find one tool sort of as a patch on and starting to gather data through the queries and the SQLs and start consolidating data in a very price-effective way to start delivering a message when you start having acquisitions or you have mergers and acquisitions. And what can you do with the data? You don't want to right away revamp your ERP. So Power Dashboard gives you that opportunity to start. How do you want to source the data and in which form or fashion you want to visualize it? So it was very little sell to be done. It was an urgent need that we executed here upon.
Yeah, no, that's great. And in terms of rolling it out, was it essentially like a collaboration between finance and IT doing it? Was finance just driving the process the whole time?
No, it was finance and IT. It was really a combined effort. It was also the need to understand. Also, the sales team wanted to have a better way to understand what the sales impact are. So it was really an understood need from the entire corporation. We need a tool that helps us to dissect in the way that we want and give us the utmost flexibility to visualize that one also understanding that we had to have a very hard look at the underlying data, the master data management. So that's been a very heavy focus from the IT side of things on how we can really get the most out of the data. And that is just for the reporting and forecasting. I'm not even yet going into the what we can do with the analytics and how we can extract more and more information out of what we have at our hands.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point that that I want to touch on with the data and analytics. I know you mentioned a key area of importance was around master data management. Was that something that you had to implement prior to rolling out Power BI? Was that something already at your organization?
I think that that's currently something that we're looking into, right? So, of course, we had to make sure that certain data points are overlapping, but it's an ongoing effort to really align from different parts of the companies how data is flowing, how it's being represented in terms of does it flow into the right buckets or how we want to have it structured. Yes, all the numbers, for example, all the SG&A buckets are in the SG&A buckets, but how do we want to slice and dice and make it flow through in our different segments of company? That is something that's an ongoing effort with how we map it and make sure that the cost centers are being pulled in the right way. So that's really crucial efforts. It's an ongoing effort, right? So what might work on a Monday, we might want to change on a Thursday to be flexible with our situation. So we try to keep it agile and not have everything written in stone without compromising on some of the rock pillars here.
Roland, when you were choosing Power BI, were you looking at other vendors as well, or did you just really go with Power BI based on your past experience?
We No, that's a great question, Daniel. So we looked into some, but it became very evident as most of our tools that we're using are Excel or Office based, right, or Microsoft based. We decided to go with the Power BI dashboard just for data integration and how things flow and how we can pull it. We still have certain things that are not being pulled out of ERP, so we have to have the link to some Excel spreadsheets, and that just by nature works the best with Power BI. And most people know that there's a very similar tool out there that we looked into, very similar, but we chose not to just because how it's better integrated with the whole Office package, Microsoft Office package. That was one of the biggest decisions for us for the data flow.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I guess if you were to quantify and look at, I know you said that this initiative, was driven from, it was more of a needs driven initiative than hey, let's let's just go and implement our dashboards. But if you were to look and sit and like quantify the benefit of what you get out of implementing Power BI, how would you do it?
I think it's at least from my perspective right now in my current position, it's hard yet to quantify. But what I can say is that I can do much more with the current team that I have from a financial support for my clients, right? So I can support my sales team, I can support my manufacturing team or the executive leadership team who are my main customers, right? And I can provide them insight in a severely quicker format than downloading from 2 3 different ERPs, smashing it into an Excel spreadsheet and formulating then Excel formulas or some charts. With Power BI, I can do this at the snip of a finger. So what took me like half a day, I can provide now within like 30 seconds. So that's the increased effort and provide insights to the executives.
Yeah, no, that's great. In terms of integrating all the different systems to bring all that data together, do you have like is the data flowing into like a data warehouse or somewhere that Power BI?
Correct. We have like two items, right? We have one data warehouse, but we also got a data mart. So we're using two different kinds of approaches right there. Right now, as we have two different ERPs that are sort of flowing together, using the data mart because that enables us to more articulate how we want the data to flow and modulate it. So that's right now the best way for us to do it. Of course, at the end of the day, we want to have one ERP where all the data is being in the data warehouse, but we're not there yet. It's more like a midterm, long term, as the two companies just merged together at the end of last year, right? So we're 11 months into full integration. So that will be further down the road when we say, look, now that we have everything up and running, how can we get those two combined as well, right? That's further down the road. There were more urgent needs to tackle before that.
So I guess as you're looking into, I know you're, enjoying, the benefits that you get from from Power BI. I know you mentioned, LongView's been a big help to you as well. Are there other types of technologies that you're currently, or have kind of on the roadmap to look into that'll help you?
One of the things that I'm looking into, but it's very early stages, more like in its infancy, is how can I have predictive analytics? So starting to tap into how can I use AI for some of my forecasting. But as I said, extremely early stages, and not like a chat GPT, right? I'm looking something that's going a little bit deeper in terms of what are my sales cycles, when do my sales happen, and what kind of portfolio, to help me understand what kind of correlations are there or aren't there, right? So there's so many data points that I can use some sort of like very basic statistic models, but an AI approach or a Python approach even can help me to flush out the signals that I cannot see myself yet. And I'm a big believer in the weak signal theory. I'm not sure if that resonates with the audience here, but I'm always happy to be able to flush out things that might turn into something bigger down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess just for those that aren't familiar with it, you want to just talk a little bit, elaborate a little more on.
Many moons ago. So I mean, it was my college days. So we're talking about 20 plus years ago when there was still a green screen out there in the tube, right? So pretty much what was one of the theories is that in every timeline you pretty much pinpoint or can pinpoint something that started out as a very small signal, barely noticeable, but through its cycles reiterate and create some bigger signals, which then turn into an event that's statistically important. And in very or lots of models, you can actually start tracking them or identify them. What could then, through simulations, be simulated, what turns into a bigger model. Could be sales disruption, could be manufacturing disruptions, and so on and so forth. And the theory is, the earlier you can detect those and sort of iron them out, the more likely it is that you don't have any adverse effects down your P&L down the road, which means your profitability forecasting is much more accurate and you can have much better business decisions.
No, that's great. So I've worked with clients in the past who, they see their numbers are off by $5,000 that they move to a system or whatever, and they say, "Oh, it's 5,000. It's statistically insignificant or whatever in the business." You're not the kind of person that would just let the 5,000 go, right?
I see a deviation of that's more than 9 sigmas, and I'm starting getting nervous. So I'm a big fan of all those kind of things. Yeah, you can read a lot. You can almost read too much into all the data, right? You start seeing ghosts as well, so you have to be careful. So it can be cause for lots of sleepless nights. Yes.
How do you strike that balance of what's something that could be that weak signal, and what's something that really is insignificant?
I don't think I'm a good role model when it comes to the balance, because I'm one of those guys that wakes up at 3 a.m. and has this idea, and you find me behind the laptop and then just starts cranking it out on a basic Excel spreadsheet. And then I have some extremely intelligent and smart folks in data analytics that actually start formulating it in the Python or in R+, and start telling me if I'm onto something or if I'm just hallucinating. So, but at least it starts giving me the ideas, and then I can go back to bed, or I don't go back to bed, depending on how long it takes me. But I got it out of my system, at least formulating that idea to see if I'm onto something or not. Because fact is, in every for-profit company, you try to make more with the same that you have. So I'm trying to become as efficient as possible, be it a vehicle to achieve that in the company.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're, being intelligent about, when are you spending man hours going and, trying to find that last $10,000 or whatever it is, versus, hey, just run this through your model and can we have the computer tell me, versus, am I having somebody, going and looking at 10 different ledgers to go trace the last penny over here.
You're absolutely spot on there. I think that the balance is that you see what is material, right? I'm not going to chase down a $2,000 item when I got a $10 million problem, right? So tackling top to down. So here, how do you identify what your real problems are? If I have zero sales, nothing else matters, right? Because my P&L will not show it, or my cash flow will not care about it, right? So everything flows through, in my opinion, through the P&L. I start with the sales, everything that comes with sales, structure it out. Next step is what happens in manufacturing. If manufacturing falls apart, my gross margin is what I start making my bread and sort of like pays for me sitting here in the office and so on and so forth. And then we need folks that sell the product, and everything goes by structure and priority, right? So that's how I prioritize right there from the get-go.
Yeah, and it sounds like, it's not just a matter of, have certain products in place to, to see different numbers and, chase down the little variances. It's about having a process and a system in place that's going to help you find those variances efficiently, so that way, you don't have to go, spending that kind of time tracing, each of those, like the $2,000 line item, as you mentioned.
Precisely, and to your point, right? I mean, where it really comes into play when you use some higher sophisticated data model or sort of automated data mining and data interpretation is, let's take manufacturing, for example. So many data points from so many production lines and portfolios. So you can have Excel spreadsheet that goes into the hundreds of thousands of lines with all the different kinds of items per product and per production point in time. If you don't have a system that helps you flush through all of that, you can spend a month just analyzing one set of data, but time had already moved on. So you need something in real time or close to real time to see, is there a recurring model that sort of like is a money sink that you want to address, and or a problem that you have down the road, right? Back orders, inventory, you name it. The list is long of things you can start trying to flush out with those predictive models. And also, as we said again, is my past the predictor of the future, or are they uncorrelated if some adverse effects happen, right? So those are the things where still the human portion comes into play to flush it out, right? It's so if try to make the sanity check in that regard. But we're still years away from reaching it, or at least we're still quite a ways. It's in infancy here. I started roughly half a year ago, so I'm starting to fiddle around with that thought. How can we get it involved here without breaking the bank?
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds that as well, that, you're not just investing in, buying off the shelf products to go and, do your data visualization. When it comes to the analysis itself, it sounds like, you have data analytics capabilities, whether it's, custom Python models, et cetera. It's not just a, hey, buy this product, implement it, and now that's, gets us to where we need to go.
No, and also how it works for some smaller companies or mid-sized companies. I'm more like thinking about how can we have partnerships, right? Help develop some of the AI tools or machine learnings or deep learnings, and they have a benefit for refining their tools, and we get the benefit of starting to have some interpretation, right? So it's a give and take. That's a very cost-effective way. It's more like which company, AI company these days, is willing to do that of the smaller ones and to have that kind of partnership. But that's a relative cost-effective way to start doing and helping refine those models, because they do require a lot of data.
Yeah, no, that's great. So for other companies that are looking to build their analytics capabilities, like where is how do you start? You say today, hey, I want to, automate, and, better understand, where variances are coming from. Is there seasonality to my data? Things like that. How do you get started if you're interested?
Well, if you really want to have the basic ones, right, just start with Python, or a person that is very savvy at Python, right? So, and I'm not one of these people. So if you ask me now, hey, Roland, can you share a Python code that you wrote? I'm the wrong person, right? I know people that can do that. But then the next step is, then you can, I think you're going to share my contact information, DM me or text me or contact me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to give you some contacts there in the AI industry that are happy to and eager to reach out. But due to confidentiality, I would then say, like, hey, if they are willing to do the same, right? So I'm not gonna spill out those names here on the platform.
Yeah, no, that's great, because a lot of companies, they're looking to get into AI, looking to build data analytics. They don't necessarily want to set up a center of excellence tomorrow and hire 10 people to go through it. So it sounds like you've been smart about how to get started, where you don't necessarily have to invest a ton of money up front. You can kind of see, is there a return on the investment from doing this, and then later on, once you know that, hey, there is a return, now let's go and invest what we need to invest to to get the capabilities that we know will come out of the initiative.
That's the plan, right? So as I said, smaller company in the bigger scheme. You want to be very cost efficient and find the way and the path forward that doesn't cost you right away 6 to 7 digits to get it set up just to keep running, right? So you need immediate impact because the environment is very fast moving, right? If you need like 2 to 3 months to come back with a price point or a price suggestion, there's many other people out there or many other companies that can or want to do the same thing, and they move on, right? So you have to be very clear and very fast in your understanding about your costs and what you can do or not do, not just in the present, but also down the road, and have all your factors and variables that come into place of the initiatives that you drive and that you want to finance and what you can do and cannot do. Because it's as important to know what is your price floor as it's what's your price ceiling. You don't want to sell something at a loss, but you also don't want to price yourself out of the market as well, right? So it's a very delicate balance that you have to deliver fast.
So I guess when it comes to the analytics around things like pricing and all, like, is that something your team is providing to to the other departments? Are they investing in their own capabilities? I guess my question is more around the, like, what's the role of finance in your current group?
So we're currently reformulating the approach how we have it onto business. So I'm right now, or I stood up my team, and it had a rather reporting driven approach and very limited in the business. What I'm trying to position us is that we are the right hand side partner of the business, providing the insight of what can we do or what can't we do, what are the costs that should be taken into consideration as the contract negotiations go into place. Might it be what kind of capital infrastructure do we need, right? What kind of additional resources? Do we have the footprint in the plans to provide that one, or what is the investment that we need? And provide it to the sales team as they're leading the negotiations, but pretty much sophisticating them on these are all the things that are underlying. It's not just enough to have a dollar sign, but you have to have an understanding of what are your expectations of profitability, how do you want to provide the service, and so on and so forth. So the list is long that goes into a contract. And here my team now starts stepping in and providing that kind of intel, and also looking at some contracts that were in place from a longer time ago, and just identifying where do we make money, or where are the cash cows, and where is it where we're a little bit leaner. So to have that understanding for the business partners.
Yeah, no, that's great because some organizations are just kind of hey, you want to understand pricing for your own contracts, set up your own systems to do that. It sounds like you're really partnering with the other groups, parts of the business, so that you're enabling them to make better decisions themselves. It's not just about how do we get a great hold on what our numbers are and all of that. It's about how do we effectively partner with different groups within the business.
It drives the overall discussion, right? As we are heavily contract-driven organization, I've also been in the consumer side, or it's more consumer style side, I should say. And here, if you don't understand your contract in detail, right, how can you then say you have a portfolio where you have certain expectations to your stakeholders, and how can you make decisions on these are the structures of my sources of growth, and these are the impacts that I have on my operating income or EBITDA, whatever you take as a measurement or as a KPI. So to have that understanding helps you also be able to understand what is my overall structure within the company that I'm driving in order to provide all those services. The way that I'm interpreting my role is everything stands and falls with the sales, and everything has to be aligned to provide and make those sales happen. May it be in the manufacturing organization, may it be in the sales organization, or maybe like finance, right? I don't have direct impact on the sales, but I'm a supporting function, and every single one has to have a justification that we are driving sales. If you're not driving sales or ensure sales, then you have to question, like, what is my purpose within the corporation, right, to drive that one? So everybody has a certain role to fulfill. Engineering, and it can be house maintenance, it doesn't matter, right? So everybody got their own play, but everything has to flow into that structure.
Yeah, no, that's great. Just given your experience working at companies of different sizes, are there any particular themes or lessons that you think are just kind of universal to no matter whether you're a Fortune 500 or a mid market company? These are things you should be thinking about.
I think For me, over those last 20 years, one of my learnings or the base learnings was, as I'm involved in the budgeting processes, to always build the initial draft of the budget as a bottoms up, to have the real grounding of what is the sales and the cost structure underlying. And then as you go through the iterations of other expectations, you build upon on that one, and you then focus on how can you fill that certain gap or that delta to expectation, versus starting a lofty target that's built on sand and then you start piling on top of it. That usually tends to result in very poor performance and attainment in the actual year then. And everybody at that point who has experienced that one knows, instead of a swimming pool, you buy yourself an inflatable the year after with your bonus payout, right? So, and you have lots of headaches, so you need adults as well throughout the year. But all kidding aside, always starting with a realistic budget plan as detailed as possible with the tough discussions, and you go on from there. That's independent from Fortune 100 to mid market. So that's my biggest.
Yeah, no, that's great. I guess what I know you mentioned that here you have a couple of core products that you use. I know other companies may have too many products where it's almost like with the iPhone marketed as there's an app for that, there's a product for that, and buying 20 different things to fill all the gaps of everything. I guess how do you strike the balance of what's the right amount of technology that's going to enable you versus just be overloaded with just there a ton of products out there on the market that'll solve this one specific problem and another one that'll solve this specific problem. Where do you invest and where do you I guess get more creative?
I think that's a tough question, right? So have as many as you need, have as little as possible. That's my philosophy. What I tend to be is more like on the left side of the bell curve. So I like to have as little as possible, not just because I hate paying license agreements, but also because you get lost in all the different kinds of applications, right? So if I want to have financial data, I want to have one source of truth. In our case, we decided it is going to be Power BI. It doesn't matter. Any other report, doesn't matter what the number shows. If it's not aligned to Power BI, it is wrong. It doesn't matter, right? And we flush it out. If it comes to sales, use Salesforce, right? Or if you want to choose something else, go for it. But stick with your one source of truth. Or if you have an HR tool, we know there's Workdays, there's Dayforce, and you name it, other stuff out there. Stick to one thing and don't have competing items. Or if you're a patchwork of different acquisitions, start getting aligned very fast, because the challenge, in my opinion, is like if you got different or competing systems, what is the source of truth? Because everybody can speak the truth, but the numbers are misaligned, and then you find yourself discussing totally different sets of alignments, and you have frustrations because the number is 200. It's like, well, it's 300, and the truth might be somewhere in between or none of those. So that's my learning. I try to keep it really simple, and I always strike to, is this aligned to that system? And if not, give me that number that does that. Always striving to really use the source of truth and not have any other sort of handmade of one-off report. That's how I strike it.
Yeah, I'm also interested in your take on. I know right now you said going through acquisition that different systems from the different companies. How do you manage getting the data that you need, being able to figure out like what's the go forward plan on from a technology standpoint, from a capability standpoint. How do you manage that?
So here's the approach, and there's an amazing talented team that really is into that day to day, right? I sort of just threw out my wishes that I want to have, and they say, Roland, we can do it or we can't do it, right? So I'm not taking on that merit. There's another amazing team out there. But what I do though is I follow the approach of take the best of two worlds, right? So our two companies merged now almost a year ago, and I always follow the philosophy: if one company does one thing really good, let's take it on from that element, but don't shy away and say, look, the other one is bad on this side, so let's take this one, right? That would be hard to see, like, okay, it's only one set or one suite of things, and everything else has to be abolished and migrated over. So you have to come with an open mind that sometimes also challenges your thinking of how the data flows and how your P&L is structured, or what kind of detail you have or give up, because there's different kinds of priorities. but overall, I'm very unemotional, so I'm not married to the data. I love data integrity, but I love good data. So if we say we take this one from the one side versus from the other side, whatever makes the most sense. So I think the first thing that has to go out the door is ego in terms of which data is better and who has the nicer blue or nicer visualization, right? So that's my approach.
In terms of, do you take the other company's data and map it to your ledger? Do you, just redesign the whole chart and make it the best of both worlds? Like where
We align. It's what I would call it harmonization, as we're not yet on a uniform ERP. So really, what we do here is certain elements are flowing differently, right? So let's say, for example, if a finance person is sitting in a plant, would that be reflected in COGS, or would that be reflected in SG&A, right? So different philosophies doesn't impact your operating income, but impacts on how you're reflecting your cost structure and your planned profitability, right? So those are kind of the nuances on how you map data. Or if somebody in HR is sitting in a plant, same topic again, how do you align this one? Or how do you reflect scrap or design waste? It's all those minor details on how you reflect it in your cost structure. Of course, everybody's following US GAAP, but it's the nuances of leeway that you have within GAAP, right? That you look a little bit different, and to align that one, because otherwise you're talking apples and bananas, and you can come to different kinds of conclusion of profitability or how you want to drive certain aspects. Yeah, so it's harmonization.
do you run into any challenges with, like, for example, like when you build out your dashboards in Power BI, where it's hey, the executives from the other company want to see things the way they've always been seeing it. You want to see things the way that, your view of the world, and maybe there's someone else that says, hey, let's look at it as a consolidated approach a different way. Like, do you run into those types of challenges?
I have to laugh because it's a great question, but as there was nothing before, it's not that there was something they could see before. So we're designing it right now, and we're actually providing that kind of new way of data visualization to really that the executive have it at their fingertips, right? Beforehand, there would be Word documents, Excel spreadsheets that float around, or PDFs. And now, if an executive has a question, they literally can go on their iPhone or Android, whatever their preferences are, and they click on the app button, coming back to your app button, and just look on my Power BI. This is what it is, and then we just help them through in case they're not yet super familiar with all the different choices that they have. And they're like, look, there's your sales in real time. This is what's happening right now. So, and we're expanding that same platform with more and more functionalities as we comb through the different deals, like daily sales report, for example, right? Switching away from a daily email onto an automated report that gives them right away the detail by portfolio, by location. This is what it shipped out, and that's your calculated profitability, and this is the attainment versus the forecast, all those kind of things. So that's what all the things we are working on right now.
Oh, that's great. And then I guess the last question I have for you is, in terms of rolling out the technology, how do you ensure that everybody that's going to be users of, whether it's the Power BI dashboards, whether it's, any of the other systems or processes that you're implementing, how do you make sure that everybody is, trained up and able to, use and maintain the dashboards?
So there's different approaches that we have and execute upon. So the first thing, as we go through piloting phase, for example, we have a very small audience, so we have hands-on, one-on-one training, and like for a month, right? We frequently reach out. Hey, do you have any questions? Do you feel comfortable with the tool? As the audience gets bigger and larger, we create something like office hours, an open door, just to come in. So once a week, if you have any questions, I'm sitting there in the virtual room waiting for people to pop up, and if nobody shows up, I'm doing my thing. But if somebody dials in, we address whatever kind of issues, challenges they have to make them everybody user friendly. But also then, if somebody has a question, my team and I, we always are there for everybody, except of course if we're in a meeting, but doors are open to swing by and really have this open dialogue. And Teams is a beauty. So we create everybody that uses those tools. We have a chat room, and everybody that has a question posts it in there. So because most of the times, if one person has that question, 10, 15, 20 other people had exactly the same thing, just didn't have the time to ask it. So we're really enabling people to get used to it. And we're also nudging them towards to use it a little, because we refuse to use to answer any questions that are not based out of those queries or those reportables. So we're sort of politely nudging them over to use that. Otherwise, change management.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I think a lot of organizations, when they roll out technology, it's kind of like the rollout piece is an afterthought of, we're so focused on getting the core features and, all the fancy, I click this dashboard and a crazy animation happens. But like, then when it comes to the training, it's like, oh, here it is. Just ask us if you have any questions. And, a lot of projects end up, not being as successful just because the rollout of it wasn't wasn't entirely well thought out at the beginning. But it sounds like, with your approach, it's let's start piloting this, let's get people to be more power users, if you will, of the system, where they're the early adopters that are going to also help other people come online later on. And then you're building up momentum, and that way when you are fully rolled out, then you have enough people supporting it that they could go to for questions.
And to your point, right, there's always a different kind of approach with the piloting, right? You start piloting from the top down, you start piloting from the root up. So there's different kinds of items, right? I mean, if it's something that you want to have first executive buy-in, you start there, or you start the critical momentum and say, like, look, everybody's using this now, so let's cascade and upwards in the hierarchy. So, but that's something that everybody has to design based upon the structure where they're at in their journey, right? So for us, the top-down approach worked the best, starting with the top management and then trickling it down. But I've also lived it when it was sort of force-fed. Look, you have now exact 3 opportunities to train, and after 2 months, your old system just go away. So you're on your own if you're not familiarized with the new systems that we're using. So there are two approaches, not bad or wrong or right or wrong. It's just different ways of how to really get the folks switched over from one element to another. And the change resistance, change management is really crucial, because people just like the way that they looked at things, because that's how they feel comfortable and know how to quickly operate and not spend too much time on it.
Yeah, there's always that disparity between we're doing it this way because that's how we've always done it, and we're doing it this way because that's the best way to do it.
It's hard to believe, but some people think, this finance is not the most important thing in the world, so and the most exciting thing. I don't know how they can feel that, but I mean, come on.
We know the truth, though. We know the truth.
We know the truth. Exactly. We look behind the curtain.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, that's all the time that we have here today. I guess, Roland, the best way for people to reach out to you if they have questions or anything. I know you mentioned LinkedIn. Is that your preferred?
You start with LinkedIn. I'm checking it several times a day. So stalk me on LinkedIn. I don't take any offense. Go there as many times as you want. And if you have questions, DM me and we'll get in touch. I'm happy to help all my fellow financiers out there. So we're all one big family. So we're all in for the cause.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thanks for joining us today, Roland. It's been extremely insightful. There are a lot of the key takeaways that that we all have, myself included, just from our discussion today. And for our audience, if you want to see great guests like Roland on the show, please be sure to follow us. Like our channel, subscribe to it, and we'll be sure to bring you up other great guests as well.